Okay, this is the card that I needed to make this week for our son's birthday. So I thought, well, I'll just show you how I did it. He's a violinist, so I did a pop-up card in Pop-Up Card Studio. But I started with the violin and make the cut. And this is a very easy project. It has to be easy for me to do it in Pop-Up Card Studio. So if I can do it, you can do it. And I'll show you how. Pretty simple. So the first thing we'll do is get the violin out of the gallery and make the cut. So I'll open Make the Cut, and if we open a new project and go to the top of the screen where it says Import from Gallery, it looks like a tic-tac-toe board icon up top center of the screen. And if you when you do that, if you type in violin under search terms and descending and then click on search, you'll get 3 different violins that show up. I just clicked on the download underneath this first picture here to get this violin here. Now this violin happens to have lots of layers, and it's also locked. If you click on it, you notice, oh, it doesn't select anything. I can't seem to edit it. But if you go down to the lower right corner and click on the gold lock icon and select Unlock All, then you'll see the gray bounding boxes showing each of the different pieces. Now you'll also see on the layers palette on the right side that all the different pieces of this design have been placed on their own layers. Now it is possible that some designs might come in all on one layer, but by right-clicking on a layer, you can select to each its own if there are multiple pieces, and then they'll each go to their own layer. And Make the Cut, when we're cutting to a cutter, we cut by layers. We can cut everything, or we can cut just certain layers. Well, in this particular design, the first thing I need to do is resize it, and Amy had a question about resizing, so I'll answer that question right now. What I need to do is resize everything because this violin's too tall for my card. Actually, what I need it to be is approximately 2 inches wide. So what I'm going to do with the gold lock icon is type in 2 and enter, and it resizes the design proportionally. You notice that I have straight arrows. These are the resizing arrows. If I drag out, everything is bigger proportionally if I drag the corner. If I hit Control-Z, undo, it goes back where it was. If I click on the side arrow, it distorts it, makes it wider than it was proportionally. Control-Z, undo. Same with these arrows. It resizes to Control-Z, undo, because I still want it to be about 2 inches wide. But I also want to rotate this image so that it fits better on my card. Now to rotate, all we need to do is get the rotation handles. Click on the design, and you notice that the arrows change from straight arrows on the corner to round arrows on the corner. Now I want to rotate mine. Maybe I'm going to hold Control and drag, rotate it about 1 click, which gives me about 15 degrees. Now for the pop-up card, I found out that having the bow is kind of disruptive of my pop-ups, so I'm not going to do the bow. I'm going to click on the eye icon for the bow parts on the right hand side because I really don't need those. And I don't need a few other parts of it. I don't need the peg box or the bridge or the tuning pegs. At least I don't need them right now. I don't need the inlays. On this little tail piece here, I'm going to zoom in on it by typing 4 and 3. I don't need the pointed thing. That would be appropriate for a cello, but a violin doesn't usually have that. So at the bottom, I'm going to split 5th icon from the left to separate those. I'm going to click on this one piece that I don't need, and then click on the smaller of the 2 green plus icons in the lower right corner to send that piece to its own layer, and it'll be moved to the top, and I can hide that piece, but I don't really need it. Now I'm looking at the rest of it and noticing, oh, the pegs don't connect to the neck, and the scroll doesn't connect to the neck. And well, I don't know if I really need that tail piece, but I do want the F-holes, but they're all on the same layer. So what I'm going to do is click on those to select them, and I'm going to use this split again to put everything on its own layers. I'm going to click the tail piece and send it to its own layer and hide it. And the strings I don't think I need either right now. If I did cut the strings on my prototype, but the strings did they kind of sliced up things. I selected a little more than I wanted to. You see that I selected this F hole. I'm going to hold shift and click on it to get rid of that selection, and I'm going to click on these pieces of the tuning pegs that I didn't want to select. We'll send the selection to its own layer and hide it, and let's see what I've got. Well, I lost a little bit of the tuning pegs here, so you see if I can get those back. I'll click on that, hold a shift and click on that tuning peg and send them to their own layer. Now I'm going to hide the strings, and I think I've got pretty much what I need. Now I need to figure out how to connect everything. Well, one way to do it is just to do a shadow. I'm going to hide the strings. Well, I still have some of the strings here. Left click and hold a shift and see if I can get this other one. Sometimes it's helpful if you can't grab something, is just to hide everything, and then it makes it a little easier to get what you need. That's why layers are so very helpful. I think that one string is connected to something else. There it is. I'll send it up to the top and hide it. So now all of the strings should be hidden, and I'll show that violin again, and I have all the pieces that I would like to use now. So what I'm going to do is drag around these pieces and go to the shadow layer, which is the 4th icon on the right on the bottom, and I'm going to make a very narrow shadow around the original. But before I do, I'm going to get me a new layer here, create a new layer, because otherwise I think it's going to make a shadow on one of the hidden layers. So now you can see the shadow that's making here. I could make it maybe a little smaller, maybe 0.01. I want everything to be connected, but I don't want to lose the look of the shape. So I'm going to click on Accept here, and now hide everything. You can click on the eye and hide all. Now I'm going to go find my shadow layer, which is now at the bottom, and show it and see what it looks like here on the outline. Well, I see I still have a few lines I didn't want here. I can black that out by clicking the blackout box on the bottom. But I see up here I still have a little bit of disconnect. Now I have an option of maybe making a thicker shadow, or I can just click on this figure 8 in the upper left corner, click on the eraser tool, and make sure I have inverse eraser selected. I'm going to set the size to about 3 millimeters, and I'm going to drag this eraser. It's a little big eraser. I'm going to drag it over that edge to get rid of the break, and that did it pretty well. So now I have just, well, it looks like I have a little break here. I'm going to change this to 1 millimeter. Hold my control key so my eraser will drag straight, and now you see that I got rid of that little break that was on the pegs there. So now I could take back my fill outline here, and I'll change the color of this to brown so that I can see my design. Now I do want those F-holes to be showing. Where did the F-holes go? Well, they might be on this layer. Maybe I erased them. Oh, there they are. Okay, so I've got the F-holes, but I don't need the pieces of pegs, so I'm going to send them to their own layer and hide them. And now I think I can select all of this and join so that the F-holes are where they need to be, and I'll send the selection to the top so I can find it and change the color back to brown. So now I have what I was looking for here. There's a little bit of, I lost my definition between the pegs here. I kind of don't like that. Let's see what happens if I move this layer to the top. No. So that's not the layer I wanted. You look at my original thing here and move it up. We'll go to outline because sometimes you can see the lines better. Now it looks like I just hid that whole section in there. I could just redo this shadow so that I don't lose the definition in between my pegs, or what I could do is just, I'll select all of this and break it and select this little piece right here. Control and Shift held down and clicking will duplicate that. So now I have 2, and I'm going to move it up by holding Control key and then moving my arrow keys, and I need to turn that upside down and maybe flip it. Move it where you want, and now I will hide the pieces that I don't want and show the pieces that I do want. There we go, and join them again. Now I'm happy with my design. What I want to do now is select it. I'm going to Control C, copy, and now I'm going to open Popup Card Studio, and this is where the card is as I made it, but all I do is open a new one. So I click on New. I'm going to do a 90-degree open type project with a width of the standard A2 size, 5.5 inches wide by 4 1/4 inches tall. and click on Create. So now I have a blank canvas, so to speak. And the first thing I want to do in this project, well, since I have it on my mind, I'd kind of like to paste that violin in here so I don't forget about it. And I'm going to paste it on the plane of 3/4 of an inch from the back. So if I do that, type in the position, and I'm on the back, I'm going to right click and drag my mouse towards me so I can see this. And now I'm just going to go to Edit and Paste, and you'll see that the violin comes in here. I'm just going to put it off to the side right here till I need it. At least it's ready for me to use, and it copied it directly from Make the Cut, ready to use. So the next thing I'm going to do is add some text, and if you're going to, before you add the text, you want to put it on the plane where you're going to be, and I need the plane to be for the birthday text. I need that to be at 2, so I just type in 2. You noticed that the plane moved forward 2 inches from the back of the card, so this is where the text birthday is going to go. So I'm using the Claritin black font, and I'll just click right on my screen, and this is going to be birthday. Now the default is just to use total uppercase, which is the recommended thing to do when you're using text in Popup Card Studio. It's the default. So I'm going to click on Add and then go back to the selection arrow. Now the letters aren't as tall as I would like them to be. I think I want them 1.5 inches tall, and then when I press Enter, I did not want them wide, so I'm going to undo Control Z. I'm going to undo the lock and just change them, the height to 1.5 and leave the width the same. Now it's very important before we add the text to our card that we square off the top and the bottom where the folds are going to be, and you notice that the R is rounded here and it's a little lower than the rest of the letters. So to fix that, I'm going to click on the cropping tool on the left toolbar, and I'm going to change the snapping to the smallest. I don't want it really snapping, to 1/128 of an inch. And I'm going to drag my cropping tool just barely across the top of the letters, and then just so that I get the bottoms of each of the letters cropped so that they're nice and square. Now I'm going to select the arrow, and I need this text centered on my card, so I'm clicking on the vertical center from side to side, and then I'm going to click on the arrow right next to it, and this is under Align and Distribute, to take it to the bottom plane. So now we have the text on the bottom, and just to make sure that it's lined up where it should be, I'm going to go to Print Preview, and you can see that there's a fold line in the middle and that each of the letters have fold lines at the bottom, so the letters are connected to the bottom of the card. Now I need to add the connectors from the tops of the letters to the back of the card. To do that, I press the space bar, and it automatically changes the plane for me to the bottom side. You see the plane is parallel to the bottom of the card, and it goes automatically to the tops of those letters that I just cropped. Now in order to draw the tags, I need to make my snapping go to 1/8 of an inch, because it'll make it so much easier to find the right places to draw. I'm going to click on the Bezier straight line tool here and click on the right to auto quad, because this just kind of automates this whole process. And I can zoom in with my roller on my mouse. I'm going to left click on the leftmost yellow line on the left side until I see the red line and the blue line as dashes. So left click, and then I'm going to drag my mouse over to the right end of my text until I see the blue line turn dash and the red line on the back of the card dash, and I'll left click, and now I have connected my text to the back of the card. And what I'll do is go to File and Print Preview again, just to make sure that I have my blue mountain fold line right across the top of my letters, and I have a red valley fold line for the back of the card. So I got that right. Sometimes I don't, and if I don't, I just redo it. Okay, the next step is to add the happy. So I'm going to click on the T, and I have to go back to the back of the card to get the right plane. So I'm going to hit the space bar. That takes me to the back, and I'm going to change it to 1 1/4 inch, 1.25, and enter, so that now we see that the plane has moved back a little bit, and all the letters that I will be adding will be added on the top section. Excuse me. Now I'm ready to type in happy, so I'm just clicking my mouse and I'll type in happy and click on add. Now again, my letters aren't the height that I need or the width that I need, so I can change that over on the right side with them selected and clicking on this top left arrow. And I'm going to leave the lock unlocked because I want the height to be 1.5 and enter. But I also want this to be a little skinnier. I'm going to use the straight arrows, and in Popup Card Studio we have the same options of the arrows as we do in Make the Cut. I like happy to kind of line up the Y to line up with the H to give room for this violin over here. So before I put it in place, I need to crop it again, just like I did before. It's easier to crop with the snapping down on the lowest setting. I'm going to left click and drag. So now that it's got nice clean top lines and bottoms, and I'm not going to center it this time, I'm just going to drop it to the plane, which is the top of the birthday thing here. So I can kind of right click and move my mouse button to make sure that it's where I want. If I'd like it move it over, I can use my left arrow key a little bit. I'm going to leave myself at least 1/4 inch, I think. And that looks pretty good. And now I'm ready to draw the tab from the top of the happy to the back of the card. So I'm going to click on the space bar to change to the bottom plane. You notice that it's got edit side bottom over here on the right. I'm going to click my pen, make sure it's on auto quad, and go over to the leftmost edge of the yellow line until I see the dashed blue and the dashed red lines. Then I left click, and then I go to the back of the card and look for again the dashed blue line and the dashed red. But the reason I'm having trouble is I forgot to change my snapping to 1/8 inch. It will automatically help me find the exact place. So you see now the red is dashed and the blue is dashed, so I'll left click. And sometimes I forget, so I need to remember always to change my snapping when trying to draw these connecting lines to the back. So I want to make sure before I move on that my letters have not gone too high. I'll zoom out a little. You see this little white line? That shows me anything above that white line might pop out of the top of the card when it's folded. So that's kind of my guide that my my design elements should not go above that white line. But let's go to File and Print Preview again, just to make sure we've got all of our fold lines. We've got lines at the bottom of Happy, the tops of the Happy, and the back of the card. So I think we're good to go. We're going to now move this violin into place. If I press the D key and click on the violin, it'll automatically take me to that plane of 0.75 where I put this violin and allow me to select it. And just like we did on the letters, we need to crop it so that it has nice straight edges that will have fold lines on them. So I'm going to go to 1/28 of an inch again, click on my cropping tool, and I'm going to crop this so that I'm going to get a good straight edge at the top of the violin and one at the bottom. And then I'll click on the arrow, and I'm going to drag my violin over here and click on the line to the bottom. And here I'm going to need to raise the Z order, my selection. That gives it priority over some of the other shapes. And I'm checking how it's lining up with this, so I'm going to move it over just a little so it doesn't interfere with this tab. And it looks like it's in a good position. So now I'm going to hit the spacebar again, and you notice that the yellow lines show up at the top of the instrument. Again, I'm going to click on the auto quad, change to 1/8 snapping, and I'm going to left click and then right click at the back, left click, and now I've got a tab for my violin. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to move my slider to open and close, and it looks like there's nothing sticking out from the card. You can kind of rotate your mouse while dragging to get different views. And we'll look at the print preview again to make sure the violin is where it belongs. So we have a blue mountain fold, a red valley fold, and a red valley fold here. So that looks good. So I think I'm ready to save this file and get it. Now if I want to, I can cut straight from this software, or I can export as SVG to cut from cutters that don't have Make the Cut available. This software supports all Make the Cut machines. So the next step is to go to Export, and before I render the project I'd like to export the project shapes and save them as SVG, because that'll give me the opportunity, if I want to cut some brown paper to add to the violin and some other colored, maybe decorative paper to paste over the front edges of the Happy, and a different color for birthday if I want. If I export project shapes, it'll allow me to do that, so I'm going to do that first. So I'm just going to save this as shapes. Maybe I'll call this shapes for, change the number to 2. And then this automatically exports it into InView, which would be where I would use this if I were cutting to my Hazel's View machine. I'm going to go back to Popup Card Studio and File, Export project rendering, and this time I could choose to the machine if I wanted to cut it to my Zing or my Gazelle or some of my other cutters here. But I'm also going to export this as an SVG so that I can use it with my View or my Eclipse or my Explorer. So I'm going to click on Save as or Export as SVG, and we'll just call this Happy Birthday Violin 2. Because every time I make it, it's a little different. I'll save it, and this again will open in the view. So it comes into view with the score lines, red and blue, cut lines, the card cut lines, everything all ready to go with no other adjustments needed. Now I could bring in also the other pieces here that if I would like to use these, I do have to break the groups. But if I would like to bring these pieces, I'll copy and then open my other window and Control V, I think, paste. I forgot to copy. But I can do print and cuts, or I can do just cuts. I'll show you and make the cut how that works here. So I have this card here. I'm going to go into make the cut and click on the SVG icon to bring in that different file that we just did, and that was number 2. I'm going to bring in both. Now this is how you can bring in, if I bring each one of these in separately, I'd have 2 different pages. What I'm going to do is click on the shapes, hold the Control key, and then I'm going to click on the card also. You could select all of these. They would all come in on the same page, each one on a different layer. And that's how I prefer to work with a project, is having everything on one page but different layers. So I'm going to click on Open, and you'll see that the card itself opened over here and the shapes opened over here. And I'll change to my green mat so you can see these and what I would do with them. So I have my card over here. Maybe I'll change my card to yellow, and that'll make it a little bit easier to see the colors. I have this violin. If I wanted to make the violin brown, if I wanted to cut it out of brown, I could. I can click on that and send it to its own layer, and then when I'm ready to cut brown on my cutter, I could hide these other layers and just cut that piece out. If I would like these letters happy, I probably am not going to do a background, but each one of these pieces could be a separate background. But I'm not going to use those. Let's suppose that I wanted to lay over some pattern paper. I click on the smaller, the 2 plus signs at the bottom of the screen to send this to its own layer, and maybe I want this to be purple. And then I can select this to send it to its own layer, and maybe I want it to be a lighter purple. Now this is how we would use the layers to cut by color. We put each different color on a different layer. Then when it's time to cut, we hide the layers that we don't want to cut. So I want to cut this color, and we would go to the cutting screen just to cut that layer. And I hide that. You're ready to do this color. I show the layer that I want to cut. Because only the layers that are showing will be cut. Then I can go and show all by clicking on the eyeball and selecting show all. And I could cut the brown out and then lay it over there for having it ready to fold. Now, another option here, what I would do if I would like to do a print and cut, is to take this original violin that we had over here, and I'll turn off the outline so we can see the colors. I'll show all. And I changed it a little. You can move things up, move layer to the top to see them. Get rid of empty layers. And all the layers are here, but I think I need to take the violin to the bottom. Now you can see all the pieces here. I really still don't want the bow because I didn't add that to the design, so I can hide the bow layers. Those are strings. Now, if I would like to make a print and cut project out of it, right now it's many pieces, and I'll show you the outline. It's lots and lots of pieces. If I'm doing a print and cut, I don't want all the pieces. What I want is one little piece. I don't want that little piece there. I want to select all of these and click on this icon that is texture snapshot. So when I click on that, I get one single picture with just the lines, and I can black that out for the strings, or I could leave the strings there to cut, which would give it a little decorative element as well. If I don't want the strings, I would hide those also before I do this texture snapshot. But you see that it's now not going to cut out all the little pieces, it's just going to cut the lines that I had selected to cut. So that makes it possible for me to do a print and cut with this, cut this out, and right now I'll just copy it, and I'll take it over to this, and Control-Shift-V brings it in, and then I can paste that cutout piece right on my card. So now I'm going to have a really fancy violin to put on this pop-up card. So that's basically how I made the card. My son was delighted with it. I just put some stickers on the outside, instruments and such, and metallic stickers, and he was very happy with it.